This is Praios and I am a professional gambler. Today we will look into another video of Galfond. It's about making the right preflop adjustments, expert exploits. I wonder what this is about. Preflop actually is relatively straightforward and easy, but maybe he will surprise us with some very nice exploits that even I don't know about. I mean, I doubt it, but let's see. My first thoughts about it before having watched the video at all is the best way to learn preflop is with a GTO program, and the one I'm recommending is PLO Trainer. This is by far the best one for preflop. If you want to learn PLO for no limit, you would need another program. For example, PLO Solver. There's also another product on the market. That's the one of Galfond himself. It's called PLO Vision. Yeah, it's PLO Vision. Had to think about it a bit. If you want to sign up for any of these programs, feel free to use the links in the description. Without further ado, let's now get into it and see what Phil Galfond has to say. And by the way, thanks for providing this video.
Phil here. Today, I want to talk about pre-flop adjustments. In past adjustment videos, I've talked about a single post-flop leak and gone into how to take advantage of that on multiple streets. With pre-flop, some of the adjustments are super simple. So I kind of wanted to batch them all together. We're not going to cover, every possible pre-flop leak and how to adjust to it, but we'll just talk about pre-flop in general and how to make adjustments. Let's start with this.
I think a big leak nowadays is that people trust too much in a solver. And if people divide a lot from the solver strategy, they don't adjust. They just keep using the strategy the solver suggests but it's just bullshit. I mean, if you play against someone who is 3-betting you, when you raise UTG, he's MP and 3-bets you, and he has 10% re-raise instead of 4 or 5, which he should have, then you obviously have to make some adjustments, but many people don't pay attention and don't do it properly. So that's something people should open their mind for, and not just blindly stick to the ranges you learn from the solver, but also adjust to your opponents that don't use the GTO approach and have other ranges. And it's becoming even worse when you play someone who is dividing a lot from the perfect strategy. But I guess then it's more obvious. But some regulars even 3-bet too much against certain positions. Some love to 3-bet on the button, for example, and you should make adjustments too, for example. I mean, if you get 3-bet more, you can obviously 4-bet more, and obvious. This is an obvious adjustment. Let's see what Phil has to say.
Super obvious one. Let's say it's folded to you in the small blind, and you're up against a big blind who folds too much against a raise.
Yeah, that's like the best and most easy exploit ever, when you should open every hand. Easy game. And even some regulars or multi-tabling regulars often have this leak. And against these dudes, it's profitable to raise any 2 or any 4, depending on the game. And you will make an auto profit.
That's an easy one. You just start raising everything. If they're folding enough to make raising with any 2 cards profitable, you raise with any 2 cards. Take yourself back, 1 position to the button. And now let's say the big blind folds too much, but the small blind doesn't. Now the actual math on, basically how much they fold and where the cutoff becomes then for you to add additional hands to your opening range is not, that's for you to figure out. But you definitely can add some hands if the big blind folds too much. And even if the small blind folds too much, you can add a couple more hands, although most of the defense comes from the big blind. So focus on the big blind's kind of leaks or tendencies. You can also open more hands if the big blind and the small blind don't 3-bet enough. This is a common one that you'll see in live poker. They're just not finding the 3-bet bluffs.
Yeah, that's also very common in Hot Limit Omar. People 3-bet way less than they should. And if they 4-bet, they also don't always have aces in live setups. So that's pretty common leak. And you obviously can take advantage of this as well.
And so their 3-bet percentage instead of being, instead of being 10% in that spot, or actually if small blinds could be as high as 20, I don't know. But let's say instead of being 12%, which is supposed to be, it's like 4% or 5%, you get to open more hands because of that. If they play poorly,
yeah, they make your life way more easy when they don't put pressure on you regularly.
Post flop, you get to play more hands because you're going to get unexpected, like EV that the charts, the pre-flop charts don't take into account post flop because they're going to make mistakes. Now, if let's take the opposite case, let's say the blinds are too loose. You might say, oh, well, they're too loose, so I should be able to take advantage. Like some of my hands should do better because they're playing, too wide of a range. No, some of the EV from your weakest opens, in theory, come from stealing the blinds. Like a lot of it comes from stealing the blinds and getting some hands that dominate you to fold. Like when you're raising whatever it is, 7-5 suited, you're making a lot of 7-8 offsuits fold, things like that. If they're playing too loose, you have to open tighter and you're going to get more value with your good hands. A lot of people think, oh, well, if somebody's making a mistake, the way I take advantage is, if they're making a mistake, I must be able to play more hands to take advantage of that mistake. But sometimes the mistake, the way you take advantage is you play fewer hands because.
Yeah, well explained. I mean, it's generally the case that you want to do the opposite what the table does. So if the table is very loose, you want to be very tight. And if people play very tight, you can get away with playing very loose.
As those hands lose value, the value all goes to the hands, to your better hands that you're going to keep opening. That's where their mistake benefits you. Similarly, if they're 3-betting too often, you can't open as many hands because you get denied equity. Like a lot of the hands that have to fold to the 3-bet get denied equity more often, lose some of that EV post flop. And then it's pretty important to, I think this is the one people struggle with the most, is when you face a tight opener, so somebody's raised with a range that's too tight, you have to fold some hands that are calls in theory.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, there are no calls because the theory is made against an opponent who's playing perfectly. This opponent is not playing perfectly, he's playing not as many hands as he should, and that's why you have to defend less hands. Yeah, as easy as that.
The types of hands you want to fold, obviously it depends on stack size and positions and a whole bunch of other things. But generally against a tighter range, implied odds hands like 5-5 or 7.
And praios, the legend too. 2 legends.
7-8 suited go up in value, whereas high card hands like King Queen offsuit, Ace Jack offsuit, Ace Queen offsuit go down in value because those are dominated.
I find it a bit annoying that the legend always only talks about No Limit Hold'em, although he's playing PLO only these days. But yeah, anyways, I guess he wants to be to make these videos to a broader audience, and most people still play No Limit Hold'em, and that's why his examples feature this game most of the time.
More often and are less frequently going to flop a huge hand that stacks their overpair, for example. There are a lot more obvious ones as we continue. So if they're folding to 3-bets too much, you have to 3-bet bluff more. And you probably still want to 3-bet your value.
Yeah, I mean, pre-flop is basically, the concepts are pretty similar. You can transit this over to PLO. It's true as well. If people are very loose, you have to be tight, and if they are tight, you can play loser. So that's basically the same.
Hands, but that can become more complicated if it's all right. So somebody opens an early position, and they just always fold to the 3-bet unless they have queens plus, and you're next to act with aces. Depending on the makeup of the table, you probably call and slow play more often because somebody behind you is going to do something, but the table conditions might not be, they might not be such that makes sense. You have to take into account a lot of different things because also something that could happen is they could raise, you could 3-bet, and somebody could cold 4-bet with queens that you get more value from then. The pre-flop adjustment that people love to make is to play more hands, and they love to justify it by, well, my opponent's folding too much.
I mean, it's way more fun to play more hands, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a tendency of people to play to lose in general, and they justify it by saying, I am the best player at the table. I want to play more hands and outplay people post-flop, but it's very difficult to do so. You get in there with very bad hands.
Or they're really bad post-flop. So, you know, this really weak player opens, and now I'm just going to call with a bunch of terrible hands. Those justifications, the logic is good, sort of, but you have to be very careful about how far you take the adjustment.
Yeah, it's also very bad. I mean, if you are last to act, that's fine. But if many more people are behind you, they probably will recognize and exploit this playing style of yours. So you cannot play as many hands as you want if people are behind you that could still 3-bet, 4-bet, and do all these ugly things you don't want to happen.
So a couple of things to keep in mind. Bad hands in good situations, and by good situations, I mean you're up against a really weak player, you're up against somebody who's folding to 3-bets too often or folding their big blind too often, etc. Like when you have a good excuse to play a bad hand, those excuses work in scenarios where not many people are going to be entering the pot. So if a really terrible player opens with a normal range from middle position.
Yeah, that's why it's so terrible that in live scenarios, people get in there with all these junky hands, especially in PLO. There's a family pot very often, even in 10-handed games. And it's so bad if you get in with hands that very rarely make the nuts and you are drawing to second best hands all the time. So yeah, this is, bad hands are only doing well if you have the field, keep the field small or get people to fold later. And that's usually not how the game works in a live setting or in very loose aggressive games with weak competition.
And it's folded to me in the big blind. You know, if they're bad enough, I'll just play any hand, because they're just going to make such big mistakes that even, 7-deuce offsuit is going to flop enough stuff enough of the time that to capitalize on their huge mistakes.
I think it's very hard to justify 7-deuce very often. Because, how bad can someone be?
But, if they're terrible and they raise and 3 other people call.
Then 7-deuce is very, very, very bad. Unless the 7-deuce game is on.
Unless the way that they're terrible is that they just go all in blind on every flop. Or something like they just put in a ton of money. Then sure, call and see if you flop trip sevens or seven, like 2 pair 7s and deuces. And then they're going to put their whole stack in. But most people, I mean, I haven't seen quite that leak specifically in my career. But basically, anytime, you want to take advantage.
I wonder when we will hear about the expert exploits. There's only like 1 minute left in the video.
Advantage of something, and there's an opportunity for a lot of other people to enter the pot, temper your adjustments. And so, if the big blind folds too much, but there are 5 people between us and the big blind, we can't we can open maybe 1 or 2 hands that we couldn't otherwise, but you can't go much further than that because all these other people are going to play against you too. And if somebody who their leak is that, post flop, they're just super weak tight. If they miss the flop, they check fold. Well, now if they open in the cutoff and it's folded to me in the big blind, I can play most hands because I'm just going to steal the pot later. But if they open in early position and 2 other players call, I like being able to bluff one of the 3 of them out of the pot more easily is not really helping my weak hands. I just want to give you this general rule of, as you're making these pre-flop adjustments, don't overdo it in spots where more people can enter the pot than the one that you're targeting. Hopefully you found that helpful. And hopefully,
Okay, it seems like there are no expert exploits in here, but it's also hard to come up with expert exploits for pre-flop. I mean, pre-flop is relatively straightforward, easy to learn. And you just have to look in the... you should use GTO as a baseline. And if someone is too loose, adjust accordingly, or too tight, also adjust accordingly. What you can also do is see more flops against people who are very straightforward or who fold too much to raises and stuff. This is also possible. But it's generally like self-explanatory. If someone re-raises too much, you should forward more against this guy. And you should also open less, as you don't want to feel the pressure. Or if someone is too tight, you can steal the blinds more often from him. It's obvious. It's hard to come up with something very expert and new and something that you could not figure out unless you, it's very hard to come up with something very expert for preflop. And the game basically solved for that too. I mean, just get a solver, learn how the game is supposed to play, use this as your basic guideline against normal people who don't divide much from this. And if someone does something completely out of line, adjust accordingly. And it's that easy.
Typically, all of us take our pre-flop adjustments too far when we because we like to play more hands. It's more fun.
Yeah, the thing is also, if you take adjustments too far, opponents will recognize. I mean, you might have a perfect exploit against someone, but if you overdo it, even he probably will recognize at some point, and then the exploit is not working anymore if he's making adjustments. So yeah, then sometimes overdoing can also be bad.
So err on the side of not taking them too far. But if you want to take them too far, do it when it's a heads-up pot. Good luck out there.
Yeah, good luck. Like, subscribe, share, all the good things. Yeah, signing out. This is it for today. Bye-bye until next time.